Alamut had fallen. The fires of Hulagu Khan had consumed not just stone and mortar, but a symbol of resistance and of an empire carved in silence and secrecy. In 1256, the Nizari Ismaili state had been shattered, its strongholds reduced to ash. Imam Rukn al-Din Kusha, the last visible leader of the fabled Ismaili assassin order, was executed. And yet, the story was far from over. In the shadows of Mongol tyranny, the Imam's lineage survived. Concealed in the alleys of Persia and the hearts of loyal devotees, the Imamate continued in secret through Shams al-Din Muhammad, Imam, fugitive, mystic. Imam Shams al-Din Muhammad grew up in secrecy and fear. Historical records of him are scant, but Nizari tradition holds vivid anecdotes. We are told that his father designated him as successor in the final hours of Alamut. As the Mongols closed in, loyal Ismaili devotees spirited the boy away to safety. While Rukn al-Din met his tragic end in 1257, executed under Mongol custody, Shams al-Din survived as the hope of a shattered community. Just before the fall of Alamut, a Nizari community had developed in the remote Upper Oxus region. This community had remained unaffected by the Mongol invasion. The Nizari Ismailis had abruptly entered a stateless reality after their defeats at the hands of Mongols. How do you lead a people when a price hangs over your head? Imam Shams al-Din chose invisibility and concealment. He wandered in Azerbaijan near the city of Tabriz, hiding his identity. Adopting the cloak of a dervish, he lived under the guise of a humble Sufi mystic and even worked as an embroiderer, earning him the nickname Zarduz, the embroiderer. This was a common ploy. The Nizari Imam became a Sufi murshid, master, to outsiders, and his followers posed as ordinary murids, or disciples. In public, they appeared as wandering ascetics, blending into the Sufi spiritual landscape of Persia. In private, they nurtured the flame of Ismaili faith. According to Ismaili chroniclers, Imam Shams al-Din maintained contact with scattered Nizari groups despite the dangers. Even as an underground figure, Shams al-Din inspired hope. Under his secret leadership, the Nizaris regrouped cautiously. He was the only hope for Ismailis after the loss of their state. When Imam Shams al-Din Muhammad died around 1310, he left a community that had survived the abyss but now faced a new challenge, an age of obscurity. His death inaugurated an obscure period in Nizari history, lasting well into the 1400s. The Imams who succeeded him lived and died in secrecy, their names barely preserved in later genealogies. Indeed, after Shams al-Din, for almost 2 centuries, the Imams are known as little more than names. Yet the line endured through this twilight, quietly passed from father to son. The community learned to survive without forts or armies, sustained by faith and clandestine networks of devotees. Many Persian Nizari Ismailis were able to gracefully conceal themselves within the esoteric currents of Iranian Sufism. Sufism and Ismailism shared many common elements such as mysticism, Gnosticism, speculative philosophy, techniques of self-development, and loyalty to a central teacher, a pir, or a sheikh. Assumption of Sufi mantle would later allow the Imams to cloak themselves as sheikhs or pirs who taught esoteric meanings, or baitin to their disciples or murids. The Persian dervishes of that period and up to the 20th century had to learn the names of all Ismaili Imams, even if they held no allegiance to the Ismaili sect. It is in this context that intriguing overlaps appear between Ismailis and famous Sufi figures. One Alamut survivor was the immortal Shams Tabriz, famed spiritual master of the Persian poet Jalaluddin Rumi, the founder of the Mevlevi Sufi order, the Whirling Dervishes. Shams Tabriz may have been one of the sons of an Ismaili Imam, probably Hassan III. This confluence of Ismaili and Sufi traditions leads to Ismaili assertions that such well-known Sufi poets as Sanai, Farid al-Din Attar, Jalaluddin Rumi, and the renowned Sufi master Ibn al-Arabi were all Ismailis, secretly if not openly, and their teachings and poetry clearly reflect that. Rumi's poetry occasionally carries flashes of imagery that resonate with Ismaili symbolism. Badakhshani Ismailis still recite Ruma verses, absent from any published diwan. Scholars trace them to Gulzar-i Shams, a clandestine devotional penned by an Ismaili Pifi. Poetry became camouflage, lover and beloved for the Sufi ear, imam and devotee for those who knew the key. The imams and their dais cloaked themselves in Sufi robes, speaking the language of metaphor and spirituality that aligned with their own esoteric teachings. The Persian poetry of the age, rich with symbol and mysticism, became a natural vehicle for Ismaili ideas. After all, Ismailism had long emphasized batin, inner meaning, and tawil, esoteric interpretation, concepts also cherished by the Sufis. Their training in the disciplines of a secret society no doubt saved Ismaili communities. Facing severe persecution, the Ismailis became fragmented and dispersed, developing into a profusion of separate communities without central leadership. Outwardly, they prayed beside Sunnis and Twelvers. Inwardly, they tended the flame of Alamut. Fragmented, leaderless, yet undefeated, the Nizaris turned persecution into paradox. The less they were seen, the farther their ideas travelled. The Ismaili imams and their followers walked unseen, wandering mystics in disguise. The Ismailis adapted by assimilating into the religious mainstream. Taqiyya, prudent dissimulation, became their armour. In those generations, to openly declare oneself an Ismaili could mean death. Mongol governors and later local dynasties were known to execute suspected Ismailis on the spot, so silence was piety. Under the mantle of Sufism, the Ismaili soul found a way to breathe. In the beginning of the 15th century, the Mongol Ilkhanid dynasty, established by Hulegu, collapsed in Persia. During this time, Persia's political and religious environment was in flux. Mongol rulers like Ghazan Khan embraced Sunni Islam, but tolerated diverse sects. Some Mongols even converted to Ismailism. Today, their Mongol descendants live in modern-day Tajikistan, where the majority of the population is Ismaili. During this time, Sufi fraternities gained patronage, spreading messages of divine love that knew no sectarian bounds. Persia remained politically fragmented for the next century. The Nizari Ismailis were able to take advantage of the more relaxed religious and political environments to expand their activities. Anjudan, a remote village in central Persia, had quietly become a refuge for the Nizari imams by the late 1300s. Its very name would later symbolize a revival. The imams, having kept a low profile for generations, now saw an opportunity to reassert gentle leadership. Persia was fragmenting into local dynasties, and amid this relative fluidity, the Nizari Imamate re-emerged in Anjudan near Qom and Arak. This resurgence is called the Anjudan period, a mini-renaissance of Nizari Ismailism. The imams here still maintained a facade of Sufi piety, but they began to produce literature and poetry and re-establish ties with far-flung communities. Imam Mustansir Bi'illah II, known locally as Shah Qalandar, was the first to settle in Anjudan around 1460. Even his chosen nickname, Qalandar, was a common Sufi epithet for a wandering saint with no master but God. In reality, of course, he was a master, the imam of the time, but to outsiders he appeared as a humble Sufi dervish. Imam Mustansir II's teachings were recorded anonymously in a text called Pandiyat-e-Jawan Mard, Advices of Manliness. This work, circulated under the cloak of Sufism, urged ethical purity and loyalty to the Imam without naming him, reflecting the delicate balance of the era. This era, now remembered as the Anjudan Renaissance, became a quiet flourishing of Ismaili thought. Poets and missionaries once again thrived, connecting the scattered Nizari faithful from Persia to Badakhshan and even far-off India. The Imams, like Absalam Shah and Gharib Mirza, offered mystical commentaries on the Quran, veiled enough to pass as Sufi teachings, yet rich with hidden Ismaili meanings for those who knew how to read between the lines. Anjudan became both a secretive pilgrimage site and the nerve center of a reawakening. Another important development during the Anjudan revival was the Imam's importance of the tithing, collecting 1/10 of the annual income of sectarians throughout the scattered Nizari communities. Tithing served two purposes. It helped finance the Imam's activities, and equally important, it helped re-establish control over disparate groups that had developed during the diaspora following Alamut. The Imams now appointed their own representatives in the far-flung Nizari communities. The village of Anjudan itself became a cherished, if secret, pilgrimage site for the faithful. Imam Mustansir II's tomb at Anjudan, a tangible link to that period, still stands. But this fragile freedom would not last. In 1501, the steadily increasing influence of Sufi tariqas and the re-emergence of Twelver Shi'ism were important developments during the 15th century. The Safavid tariqa gained a lot of political control over Persia. In 1501, they installed their sheikhs as the rulers of Persia and founded the Safavid dynasty, which would rule Persia for the next 2 centuries. The Safavids established Twelver Shi'ism as the state religion. The Safavid dynasty transformed Persia into a Twelver Shia theocracy. While this shift seemingly offered space for fellow Shias, it quickly turned hostile toward any sect deemed heretical or rivalrous. Sufi orders were forced into conformity, and the Nizari Ismailis, still few in number, responded with deeper taqiyya. Outwardly, they praised the 12 Imams and appeared as pious Twelvers. Inwardly, they guarded their devotion to a living Imam, carefully hidden from the eyes of inquisitors. However, in far-off lands, the Ismaili Da'wah mission bore fruit. Peers from Persia travelled to the Indian subcontinent, where they found a more hospitable field among the Hindu and convert communities. As early as the 12th to 13th centuries, Ismaili peers such as Pir Nur al-Din and later Pir Shams al-Din Sabzwari preached a message of Satpanth, the true path, in India. Pir Sadr al-Din was the most successful Dai in India, converting large number of Hindus to Ismailism during the 14th century. One reason why the Dawah in India was so successful was because of the respect shown by the Dais, or peers, for the beliefs and traditions of their Hindu converts. Thus, even as the Safavids bore down in Iran, the seeds of Ismailism were germinating abroad, a critical factor in the community's later survival and global character. Another partnership sheltered the Imams, the Ni'matullah Tariqa, founded by Shah Ni'matullah 1330 to 1430, who claimed descent from the Fatimids, making kinship with Nizaris only natural. By the 18th century, the 40th Imam, Shah Nizar, openly frequented Ni'matullah circles. This bond mattered when the Safavids fell and the Qajars rose in 1794. Many Qajar nobles were Ni'matullah devotees, granting Ismailis a rare window of tolerance. Safavids were replaced by the Qajar dynasty in 1794. The Qajars were connected to the Ni'matullahi Sufi order. The 45th Nizari Imam, Shah Khalil Allah, married the daughter of a prominent Ni'mat Allahi Sufi. She would become the mother of his successor, Hassan Ali Shah, born in 1804. By the mid-18th century, the Nizari Imam moved his headquarters from Anjudan to Kerman in southeast Persia, closer to the Indian border. This allowed for safe travel of Ismaili pilgrims visiting their Imam from India. In 1817, the streets of Yazd ran red. Shah Khalilullah II, the 45th Imam of the Nizari Ismailis, was savagely killed by a mob incited by local Twelver Shia clerics, a shocking act that sent tremors through the Ismaili world. But from the ashes of this tragedy, destiny stirred. His son, Hassan Ali Shah, barely 13, was thrust into the mantle of Imamate, and his mother, undaunted by fear, carried her son's cause straight to the royal court of the Qajars. At a time when power and patronage dictated survival, her plea reached Fath al-Shah Qajar, a monarch known for favouring Sayyids and Sufis. Perhaps out of sympathy, or perhaps strategy, he granted the young Imam not only justice, but elevation. In 1818, he bestowed upon him the title Aga Khan, meaning Lord and Chief, marking the birth of a new era. To cement this alliance, the Shah even offered his daughter's hand in marriage and appointed the teenage Aga Khan as governor of Kerman, a post of immense power, rarely entrusted to one so young. Thus began the storied age of the Aga Khans. For nearly 2 decades, Aga Khan I thrived at the heart of Persian nobility, polished, charismatic, and politically shrewd. Revered quietly by Ismailis, he moved seamlessly between courtly intrigues and Sufi gatherings, particularly among the Ni'matullah order, favoured by the Qajar elite. But fortune is a fickle friend. In 1834, Fath al-Shah died. His successor, Muhammad Shah Qajar, eyed the powerful governor of Kerman with growing suspicion. The political winds had shifted. The Imam was dismissed. Humiliated, Aga Khan I rebelled, rallying loyal Ismailis and tribal forces in a desperate stand against Qajar authority. But the rebellion was crushed. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, the Imam was forced to flee his homeland. It was an abrupt turn of fate. From royal son-in-law and governor, Hassan Ali Shah became a fugitive Imam. He first sought refuge across the eastern border in Afghanistan. Coincidentally, this was the very moment the British Empire was entangling itself in the First Anglo-Afghan War. Seizing the chance, Aga Khan I offered his services to the British, who were glad to have a Persian princeling and seasoned commander on their side. He and his horsemen assisted the British Indian Army in their campaigns against Afghan forces, notably helping to force the city of Kandahar's surrender. Britain and Russia were locked in the great game for influence in Central Asia. The British viewed the Aga Khan as a valuable asset against Persian and Russian interests. He had deep knowledge of Persian politics and potential influence in the region. He had followers in over 40 cities of the British Empire. The British recognized his acumen and influence. Later, in 1842–43, the Aga Khan also supported British General Charles Napier in the conquest of Sindh, in present-day Pakistan, and Gujarat, modern-day India. His contributions did not go unrewarded. The British granted him a substantial pension and respect, seeing in him a valuable ally in the region. The British royal family and the Aga Khan entered into a bond of friendship which still exists. By 1845, Aga Khan I had moved to Bombay, today known as Mumbai, the booming capital of British India's west coast. Here, he established a new permanent headquarters for the Nizari Ismaili Imamate. This move was momentous. It effectively shifted the center of the Imamate out of Persia for the first time in 700 years, ushering in the modern phase of Ismaili history. The Aga Khan was welcomed by the Ismaili community of the subcontinent, the very community founded by the Peers centuries ago. Under his guidance, the disparate Ismaili groups of Sindh, Gujarat and beyond began to be more tightly knit into a single Jama'at, community, owing allegiance to the Imam. This was the first time an Ismaili Imam had set foot in India. When the Aga Khan arrived in Bombay, he was surprised and reportedly concerned by how far the Indian Ismailis had diverged from Persian Ismaili norms. The Indian Ismailis were more Hindu than Muslim. They did not perform Islamic prayers, salat, in the Arabic form. The Indian Ismailis held on to caste-like structures. They used Hindu imagery in devotional literature and had little knowledge of Arabic or Persian Ismaili doctrine. The Aga Khan promoted more Islamic theological education and gradually phased out overt Hindu elements. He preserved the poetic and musical heritage, e.g. Ginans. These Ginans were also translated into Persian and Arabic. The Imam also encouraged alignment with Shia Islamic norms while retaining a distinct Ismaili identity. He strengthened the role of Jamaat Khanas as centers of prayer, charity, and social control. He introduced Persian and Arabic elements in rituals and introduced modern structures of governance like the Ismaili councils. The Indian Ismailis slowly started using Arabic or Persian names rather than Hindu names. For the British colonial authorities, the Aga Khan was an unusual figure, a religious leader with the status of an erstwhile prince. They treated him as a noble expatriate. In Bombay, he lived in a grand mansion, held darbars with his followers, bred Arabian horses, and even became a familiar face in colonial high society. British officers would consult him on matters concerning Muslim communities. A famous legal case in 1866, the Khoja case, in Bombay, solidified the Aga Khan's authority over his Ismaili followers. The British courts upheld his role as the legitimate descendant and heir of the Alamut Imams, and thus the Fatimid Caliphate, and thus Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was also declared the rightful spiritual leader of the Ismailis. This gave the Imam formal recognition in the colonial framework, a striking outcome given the centuries of clandestine existence prior. Thus, by the mid-19th century, the Ismaili Imamate had reinvented itself. Once a secret line of imams in Persia's hinterlands, it was now a public institution with a global outlook. Aga Khan, the first's alliance with the British, yielded a period of stability and growth for the Ismailis. He could correspond freely with Ismaili pockets in Central Asia, receive delegates in Bombay, and dispatch envoys, all under the benign eye of Pax Britannica. The Imam, who left Iran as a rebel, had transformed into a respected prince in India. Even the British addressed him as His Highness, a style that Queen Victoria later formally confirmed for his successors. Upon his death in 1881, Hassan Ali Shah was succeeded by his son, Akbar Ali Shah, Aga Khan II. Though Aga Khan II's tenure was brief, he continued strengthening the community's structures, and notably, he maintained the warm relationship with the British as well as the Ni'matullah Sufis and other Persian notables, ensuring the Imamate's Persian heritage was not lost. He was a renowned hunter and shared his father's passion for racing and breeding thoroughbred horses. After his brief imamate, he was succeeded by his 7-year-old son, Muhammad Shah, Aga Khan III. It was this imam who would truly elevate the Ismaili imamate onto the world stage. In 1885, a 7-year-old boy, Sultan Muhammad Shah, became Aga Khan III. This imam's life spanned from the High Victorian Age to the dawn of the Space Age, and in that time, he became one of the most famous Muslims in the world. Aga Khan III was raised and educated in the most modern and cultivated social circles by his mother, who was a Qajar princess. She took an active role in the leadership of the Ismaili community during the imam's youth. Aga Khan III visited the courts of Europe as part of his education. He developed a great friendship with King Edward VII and was appointed the Imperial Legislative Council in India. He was fluent in English, French, and Persian, and equally at ease in the gilded drawing rooms of London and the crowded alleys of Bombay. He enjoyed relationships with most of the royal families of Europe. He established his primary residences in Switzerland and the French Riviera. He aided the British in both world wars and urged his followers spread in various countries to do the same. From early on, the British recognized his talent. They showered him with honors. He was made a Knight Commander of the Indian Empire, a Knight Grand Commander of the Star of India by King George V, and later a Knight of the Victorian Order by King George VI. By age 25, he was appointed to the Imperial Legislative Council in India. But perhaps his most impactful role was in the realm of Muslim self-determination in British India. In 1906, Aga Khan III was instrumental in founding the All India Muslim League and became its first president. At Dhaka that year, he led a delegation of Muslim nobles and intellectuals to advocate for the political rights of Muslims, who were a minority in British India. He provided Muslims of India with the political platform. The Aga Khan firmly believed that Indian Muslims needed a voice of their own to avoid being overshadowed by the Hindu majority in a democratic system. In his speeches, he articulated what came to be called the two-nation theory, arguing that Muslims were not just a religious group, but a nation unto themselves within India. He eventually stepped down as Muslim League's president in 1912, handing over leadership to others. But the seed he helped plant grew. By the 1930s and 40s, the Muslim League, under Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was spearheading the movement for Pakistan. Aga Khan III, though no longer in active politics, lent his voice in support of the idea of Pakistan, a separate homeland for South Asian Muslims, as it took shape. He had long friendships with British officials and used those channels to advocate for Muslim interests. When Pakistan emerged in 1947, many remembered the Aga Khan's early role in Muslim solidarity. Fittingly, the new country's port city of Karachi had been his birthplace decades before. He led the Round Table Conference in London in 1930, which discussed the future of India. He was also elected the President of the League of Nations, which was a precursor for United Nations. He encouraged his followers to be loyal citizens of whichever lands they lived in, a principle illustrated by the community's prayers for the welfare of the ruling authorities, echoing a tradition he said dated back to Imam Islam Shah's guidance to Pir Sadr al-Din. Under British rule, this meant the Ismailis became known for their loyalty to the crown. The British, in turn, trusted the Aga Khan as a representative voice of Muslims. Aga Khan III instituted reforms that included providing written constitution and made councils to govern his followers. He regularized Nizari Ismaili religious practices regarding marriage, divorce, inheritance, guardianship and burial, bringing his Hindu converts closer to Ismaili Shi'ism. He worked tirelessly in support of education, welfare, and healthcare of the Ismaili community. He utilized much of his tithes that he collected for investments to provide business opportunities for his people, including housing, schools, mosques, libraries, sports, recreational facilities, banks, and hospitals. All these facilities are open for Nizaris as well as people of other religions, sects, and races. Aga Khan III's death in 1957 marked the end of an era, but also a continuity of vision. He bypassed his own sons in succession and appointed his grandson, Karim al-Hussein, to succeed him. Thus, in 1957, at just 20 years old, Karim became Aga Khan IV, the 49th Nizari Imam. It was a deliberate choice to bring in a young leader for a new age. Over the following decades, the Ismaili Imamate would undergo another transformation, as dramatic as the post-Alamut survival or the shift to India. It would become truly global. Aga Khan IV was educated in the best European schools. He completed his undergraduate studies at Harvard, majoring in Islamic studies. He pursued his grandfather's ambitious plans to improve the quality of life for his people. He has provided numerous scholarships to eligible Ismaili students to attend Western institutions of learning. In 1984, the Imam established the Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development as the umbrella organization for his Third World Community self-development projects. He has instituted programs for promoting Islamic religion, architecture, and civilization among Western students by providing scholarships at such prestigious American universities as Harvard and MIT. He also founded and encouraged the Institute of Ismaili Studies in London in 1977. Today, the Nizari Ismailis are scattered across some 30 countries, from South Asia to East Africa, Central Asia to North America. Aga Khan IV improved the socio-economic status of his people in the modern world, raising the Ismailis from the third world status of the countries in which they live. The Nizari Imams have made intelligent, objective judgments of the achievements of the Western civilization, while many other Muslim leaders have rejected the Western culture. Standing apart from poverty, illiteracy, and religious intolerance of much of the Islamic world, the success of modern Nizari Ismailis may serve as an object lesson for collectivists and statists. Despite the loss of their state and their failure to attain world conquest and control of Islam, the modern Ismailis have accomplished much of the miracle envisioned by their illustrious chief Dai at Alamut 10 centuries ago. A luminous chapter in Ismaili history came to a close recently in early 2025. His Highness Prince Karim Aga Khan IV, the 49th hereditary Imam of the Nizari Ismailis, passed away. Known not only for his spiritual leadership, but for his global humanitarian vision, Aga Khan IV guided his community for over 6 decades, modernizing their institutions, expanding education, and establishing a legacy of pluralism, dignity, and development across continents. His final resting place lies beside the Nile in the hills of Aswan, Egypt, at the majestic Aga Khan Mausoleum. It is the same site where his father, Prince Ali Khan, his mother, Princess Tajudullah, and his grandfather, Aga Khan III, are buried. Aswan was a place of solace for the family, a retreat of serenity for Aga Khan III, who found spiritual comfort in its warm sands and tranquil waters. The site became a symbolic haven, representing both legacy and continuity. With quiet dignity, the mantle of Imamate has now passed to Prince Rahim, or Aga Khan V, the 50th Imam of the Ismailis. Oxford-educated, visionary, and deeply involved in the community's affairs for years, Imam Rahim now steps into the spotlight. Unlike his predecessors, he inherits a community that is no longer persecuted or in hiding, but influential, globally rooted, institutionally strong, and well-respected. Recently, Imam Rahim made headlines by offering to mediate in the long-standing India-Pakistan conflict, a bold gesture hinting at a possible new direction. Is he stepping into the world of diplomacy, perhaps seeking global political influence? Only time will tell. But if history is a guide, the Aga Khans have always walked the line between the spiritual and the worldly, bridging tradition with modernity and faith with responsibility. Crucially, the Ismaili Imam remains, in the eyes of the faithful Ismailis, the spiritual axis, the Imam of the time, Imam-e Zaman, a living guide linking back to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through Ali. And so, from the concealment of Imam Ismail to the halls of the League of Nations, from mountain fortresses and secrecy of Alamut to Jamat Khanas across continents, this was the story of the Ismailis. A community that survived not through power, but through patience, not through armies, but through wisdom. Their history is not just one of endurance, but of constant rebirth, hidden when needed, radiant when the moment allowed. As our journey through the history of the Ismailis comes to an end, we reflect on a legacy shaped by resilience, adaptation, and spiritual devotion. The Ismailis have traversed centuries of persecution, upheaval, and profound change. Yet, through it all, they have preserved their identity, their traditions, and their unwavering commitment to the guidance of the Imam. But now, I turn to you, my audience and those who know the Ismaili history. Did I do justice to the history of the Ismailis? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this series, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more untold stories from across our shared past. Because history isn't just about what happened, it's about what it teaches us today. This is Darvesh Chronicles, where the past speaks and we listen. Until next time, may peace and blessings be with you.